Peace, y'all. This is the Anarchist, and in this video titled The Government Big Tech Takeover, we focus on Netflix. Netflix is a video streaming and media production company which is home to almost 200 million subscribers as of 2020, 73 million coming from the US alone. Netflix was founded in 1997 by co-founders Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph. Originally, the main co-founder, Reed Hastings, told the public that he founded Netflix based off of the fact that he had a late blockbuster video rental. He had an overdue video. Now, it was later revealed, Reed Hastings, the co-founder of Netflix, later revealed that this was actually a lie that he put out so that he could come out competing with Blockbuster, the dominant video rental place at the time. This begs the question, what else did the co-founder Reed Hastings lie about? Is Netflix really just a video streaming platform that was founded by this man, or is it really a government-controlled corporate company that facilitates agendas and propaganda as well as mind control? To answer this question, I want to take a look at the co-founders of Netflix and their family backgrounds, starting with Reed Hastings. Now, Reed Hastings' father is a man named Wilmot Reed Hastings Sr. Wilmot Reed Hastings Sr. was actually a lawyer for the U.S. government. He was a lawyer for the U.S. Department of Welfare, the U.S. Department of Education, as well as the U.S. Department of Health. Now, what's even more interesting about Reed Hastings' father's side of the family is they're actually a bloodline descending from a man named Thomas Hastings. If you look him up, you'll find that he is a very integral part in the founding of America. But even more interesting about Reed Hastings, the co-founder and the main key person in Netflix, is his mother's side of the family. On Reed Hastings' mother's side, you find out that Reed Hastings is the great-grandson of a man named Alfred Lee Loomis. Now, Alfred Lee Loomis is a very interesting man. He was an investor. He was also a wealthy scientist in the New York area. He was also commissioned by the U.S. government to create the atomic and nuclear bombs.
People listening, why should they care about Alfred Lee Loomis?
Well, Alfred Lee Loomis was really one of the top scientific generals of World War II. He was appointed head of the radar division by Vannevar Bush in 1940 because he had been conducting secret radar research at his laboratory in Tuxedo Park in 1939 at Bush's request, really. We were not at war yet, and the government couldn't do things overtly. There was no congressional funding for this research because America was not involved in what was then seen as the European conflict. And so much of this research was done by universities, and they were strapped for cash in the 30s. And Loomis was a private financier who was willing to bankroll research privately. And Bush turned to him and said, look, if you've got the time, the money, and the resources, would you do me a favor and look into something called microwave radar?
And what impact did he have on the whole Manhattan Project, the building of the atomic bomb?
Well, he was basically, the title was administrator of the project, but he was the civilian liaison between Roosevelt and Oppenheimer. And he was basically ran the Manhattan Project from an administrative end.
So is it just a coincidence that this man, the key co-founder of Netflix, has family ties directly to the U.S. government and also to the globalist elites? What I want to read to you guys is from an article from a website called cabaltimes.com. The title of this article is The Grand Uncle of the Co-Founder of Netflix on Propaganda. It was put out back in October 17th of 2020. And it talks about and research some of the things that I have researched and found out dealing with the co-founders of Netflix. It talks about Reed Hastings, and it also talks about the other co-founder, Mark Randolph. It has some very interesting insights, and I want to read to you a little bit from this. Scrolling down, starting here, it says, the first of the founders, Hastings, is the great-grandson of Alfred Lee Loomis and Elliot Holman Farnsworth. Now, that's going to be interesting. We're going to talk about that. It says Loomis was an investment banker and scientist involved in development of radar and the atomic bomb, and also helped develop the electroencephalogram and studied brainwaves with it. His laboratory was a meeting place for many very famous scientists like Einstein, Fermi, Bohr, Heisenberg. His cousin was Henry L. Stimson, the Secretary of War for Taft, FDR, and Truman, and the Secretary of State for Hoover, and who oversaw the Manhattan Project, which created the atomic bomb. One of Alfred Lee Loomis's children, Henry Loomis, Reed Hastings' granduncle, was the director of the Voice of America under Eisenhower and president of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting under Nixon, both of which are public broadcast arms of the U.S. government, foreign and domestic, respectively. Henry Loomis also directed research for the United States Information Agency and served on the board for the Mitri Corporation, who worked with the CIA and the Department of Defense. Alfred Lee Loomis also predicted the Great Depression and bought a ton of gold beforehand, then got even richer by buying the stocks of companies at their lowest. In a final point that I need to confirm with his wife, Ellen Hallman Farnsworth has the same surname as Philo Farnsworth, inventor of the television, and I'm pretty sure they are related. So that's very interesting. What you guys just found out is the many ties that this man, Reed Hastings, the key founder of Netflix, has to the government as well as the globalist elites. His family is all through the government on his father's and his mother's side, and various parts, broadcasting, health, CIA, information, all this other stuff. So it just so happens that this guy who founded the biggest video streaming platform of today, Netflix, is so intricately tied to the government. But let's also look at the other co-founder, Mark Randolph. It reads here, the second co-founder, Randolph, has connections that are perhaps even crazier. His great-grand-uncle is Sigmund fucking Freud. Now, many of you know who Sigmund Freud is. He's a very big part of psychology of today. Most psychological and psychology and psychiatrist institutions, they all pull from Sigmund Freud, which I find very interesting because a lot of Freud stuff is kind of fraud. Freudian is a fraud, but let's go on and read on. So Freud, pioneer of psychology who studied unconscious desires that control people, the effects of trauma, the effects of childhood incidents, etc. Even more insane is Randolph's granduncle, Edward Bernays, an Austrian-American who was heavily involved in the field of propaganda and who basically started the modern field of public relations. He worked in public relations for the United Fruit Company, who was involved with the CIA's overthrow of Guatemala's democratically elected government in 1954. So again, it just so happens that the co-founder of Netflix, Mark Randolph, is the great grandson of Sigmund Freud, someone who is very big in psychology, who we use a lot of his works today in American psychology and just society, period. But it also happens that he is the grandnephew of Edward Bernays, someone who is the father of propaganda, who wrote a book called Propaganda in the early 1920s, and is someone who the U.S. government used to push propaganda, and actually the Nazis also used Edward Bernays' works. So just so happens that most people who don't watch TV anymore also get their media and their mind control from a company who the co-founder is one of the descendants from the person who, maybe one of the descendants from the person who invented the television and invented propaganda. So these are interesting things that you guys need to think about. Hopefully you'll check in and research some of this stuff with some of the links below. Check out some of these videos and articles. But it's very interesting. I want you guys to really ask yourself the question, is Netflix a private company, a corporation that is devoid of the government, that has no ties to the government, or is it a company that was put out by the U.S. government in order to propagate agendas, brainwashing, and mind control, as well as propaganda? I want you guys to answer that question, and don't forget to like this video. Also, stay tuned for the next part of this documentary series called The Government Big Tech Takeover, where we focus on part 2 and Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. So I want you guys to stay tuned for that. Like this video, comment, let me know what you think, and don't forget to research this further. All right, Truth Seekers, I'll see you guys in the next part. And this is The Anarchist. I'm out. Peace.
I like to teach and build. I like to teach and build. I like to teach and build. Brothers about how easy it is to reach a mill. I like to teach and